welcome to the Sports Clinic podcast, where we're discussing the India-Australia match today in 2023 World Cup. With me again from Cricket Twitter, well known to analyst Permeet and Kani. So fairly comprehensive in the end. They started 2 for 3, India. Let's start with, of course, that amazing partnership. Not everyone's going to focus on Kohli, but I'd like to go on KL Rahul, who's returning from injury and really looked pretty amazing today. And I think it allows India that depth, and it sort of announces that this is the team to beat in this World Cup. It's not just the home conditions. I think they have the talent there as well.
Absolutely, Doc. I think there's not many teams in world cricket. If you put them 5 for 3 against Australia, chasing even a score about 200, who'd be as confident of chasing it down as the Indian middle order is. I think KL Rahul, he's gone through a little bit of a tough patch, if we're being honest, in the past 24 months. There's been a few injuries. There's been question marks around his part. There's a lot to say if Rishabh Pant, for example, that awful accident happened. Things might have gone a little bit differently, their plans. But I think Rahul Dravid showed a lot of confidence in him. And to be fair, he's repaid that faith. I think he gives them, just in terms of being able to, there's a little bit of reliability in that middle order, which wasn't there if you take a younger player, somebody like Nishan Kishan, who was forced to open here, with Shubman Gill being out due to dengue fever, I believe, kind of changed their plans around a little bit. But on KL Rahul, I think he didn't set a foot wrong. There's a lot to say for Kohli's performance. I'm sure Permeet has a fair bit to say on that as well. There'll be a little bit said about the drop catch. I personally don't think it would have changed the result. I think it would have made the game a little bit tighter, but as far as I'm concerned, they just were about 40 odd runs short. I think 240 on that surface breaks a whole different game altogether. And I think Australia would have made much more of a fight of it. I just think their combination for Chepauk, given how assistive it was to spin, given how well somebody like Glenn Maxwell bowled on that surface, they would have loved to have a left arm angle, somebody like an Ashton Agar. I know, unfortunate injury, they probably would have had him in there for somebody like Cameron Green to allow another sort of angle there. I think India utilized the conditions perfectly well. Ashwin, Jadeja, Kuldeep, to have 3 spinners on a surface like that is almost a ridiculous advantage against any team. But yeah, I mean, I think India, obviously top order, nobody wants to be 5 for 3. That I don't think they'll be as concerned with that as another team like a Pakistan would have been, for example. I think they still will feel it was a very convincing win. 8 out of 10 boxes, I think, checked off, barring that top order. The fielding effort was outstanding. I think Jadeja really stepped up with the ball as well. So ominous signs for everybody else. I think India have firmly announced themselves as the favorites for the tournament.
Yeah, going back to Rahul, I think he can do it all. I think after the match, he was telling one of the broadcasters that Kohli told him to play like a test match, which he did at one point. He was, I think, 15 runs off 32 balls, which is totally fine given the target they were chasing and given the pitch they were playing at, given the firepower they have in the batting. Plus, he was batting with Kohli, so it makes it easier because, of course, he can take the charge. He has it all. He's proven it. He proved it in the Asia Cup. He can go big at the death if needed. He can play pace, he can play spin, he can play scoops, he can play dash to third man. So he has it all. He's been sort of a meme in Pakistani cricket circles, which I guess rightfully so, given versus Naseem and Shaheen, he didn't, light up the stage. So that's fair. But no, I think anyone who's followed him in the IPL or for India in the past years when he has played in the middle order, he has all the gears you need to thrive, whether it's strike rotation, whether it's just blunting the ball when you get to a stage where you're 3 wickets down in the second over, or you need to go big at the death. One thing India have, which I guess most teams don't, is apart from a left armer, they have everything you'd want. They have a left arm wrist spinner. They have a left arm finger spinner. They have pacers who can bowl at the death. They have pacers who can bowl cutter. They have all type of batsmen. So they pretty much check all the box. So I agree with Kani. It's looking pretty ominous for other teams. The only way I can see them falling short is, again, one thing we've seen is that on pitches that are a bit truer, they probably don't go as hard as they can, as they should, given sort of, some of the defeats they've had in the recent past. Uh, Someone like a South Africa, Australia, England probably go a bit harder when the pitch is favorable for batting. So that's the only reason I can see them falling away, or just a magnificent bowling effort by the opposition. But yeah, it's, I think, like Kani said, they check pretty much all the boxes, and given the top order they have, one match, they wouldn't be too concerned. And especially like one of their openers wasn't their first choice. Gill is currently out, but at some point in the tournament, hopefully not by next weekend, but at some point in the tournament he'll be back. So that wouldn't concern them at all.
On the flip side, and I brought this up when I did the Australia preview, everyone always assumes that because they've won so often, because they sort of love the ODI World Cup, that they're an automatic for the semis. But some of their issues really came to the forefront today. While they have very good all-rounders, they sort of seem brittle the way they folded. But it goes back to a point you guys made earlier about that first innings, how the wickets generally tend to be a little bit more favorable in the first innings than the second. But let's talk about Australia. Should they be concerned with the ease at which they were sort of dispatched today? Or is this just such a good India team?
I think one thing Kani said is great. On pitches like this, where the ball is turning, more than leg spinners, you need finger spinners, because they can land 6 balls on the same spot. Like Kani said, they missed Ashton Agar, which I think was the most obvious thing you could see when Jadeja ended up with 3 for 28 in 10 overs. On truer surfaces, Jadeja really isn't that big of a threat, because accuracy isn't that big of a strength. But on pitches like this, all you need to do is land the ball in the same spot, and the pitch does everything for you. So that's a big thing. I feel they'll miss whenever they come up against an opposition that does boast that type of a spinner in their attack. But otherwise, I think they'll be fine. As we discussed, as Abdullah Bhai said in the England-New Zealand preview, is that the firepower these teams have in their batting, when they do play on surfaces that are a bit truer, I think they'll be fine, especially Australia. But yeah, like bowling can be a concern again. Hazelwood, Cummins, though I feel is a bit overrated in ODIs. I don't think he has done much of note. He's barely played that format, to be honest, as all of the top pacers around the world have in the past 4 years. So they should be fine. But I think next weekend is another important game. I think next weekend is when they play against South Africa.
Yep.
And we, again, between those two teams, most of us would have predicted Australia to be automatic selection for the semifinals. But South Africa, as we saw, have had a good start. They have a batting lineup that does seem scary. So yeah, a few interesting matches coming up for Australia in the next few weeks. I'm not sure if they play anyone before South Africa. But yeah, that game might well decide whether Australia has a few must-win games to make the semifinals.
For me, they've joined that group of 5 teams going for 3 positions. You may as well slot India into that one of those semifinal positions, but amongst England, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Pakistan, now you have 5 teams that are pretty even, basically fighting out for those three remaining spots, and I think they'll beat up on each other. It's then the question is, who do they lose to and by how much? And I fully expect net run rate to be to come into it. Connie, go ahead.
Yeah, just in relation to Australia, I think they are a very sort of pragmatic outfit. I think they would have seen their fixtures before the World Cup. They would have seen that India game first up as a game they could possibly lose. I think they were well aware of the conditions at Chepauk, how it would be a little bit more spin friendly. And I think it wouldn't really phase them as much, this specific result. I think they know they have six quote unquote winnable games to get them to the semifinals. And let's be honest, Australia have won the World Cup 5 times. This is their sixth attempt. They know very well how to win World Cups, how to go about the format, how to go about the group stages, how to go about the knockouts. They are better expert this than anybody else here at the World Cup. The thing I think in terms of their combination, there's a couple of things that they're well aware haven't sort of checked in yet. I think Travis Head, for obvious reasons, is a huge miss. He gives them something at the top that you just can't replace, right? And nothing against Manas Labuschagne. I think he's a wonderful cricketer, more of a red ball cricketer as opposed to white ball, but that is sort of a very big hole to fill. And Travis Head also gives them an off spin angle, which is very handy on surfaces like the one we saw in Chennai today. They, as you know, didn't have a left arm spin angle at all. I truly believe if Aaron Finch hadn't retired yet, and if he was available, he would probably bowled a couple of overs on that kind of surface as well. But just in terms of their non-regular bowlers, the Manas Labuschaignes, the Steve Smiths, the David Warners, if you will, you can understand why defending 200, they didn't want to risk a bowler of that sort, because you can lose the game entirely there. I don't think Australia would be too phased by any means. I think in terms of what to expect from them, obviously David Warner, Steve Smith are the cornerstone of their batting until Travis Head returns. So there will be a lot of expectations around them. But I think the South Africa game will be the first one where we see Australia truly sort of arrive at the tournament. So a lot to look forward to.
And just one thing I'll add there, which we didn't discuss about the Zampa, again, was very surprised with how he bowled today. I think over the past six years, I would say he's probably been the best defensive wrist spinner we've seen in ODI cricket. He doesn't usually go for a lot of runs, but today he was actually brought into the attack after Maxwell. Maxwell, I don't know what figures he ended up with, but after 4 overs, he'd only conceded 9 runs. I think by the end of the fifth over, Maxwell had only conceded 12 runs, whereas Zampa went for 13 in his very first over. So Zampa's form is important. Again, I'm not sure this is a one-off, or I don't know how Zampa performed in the series against India right before the World Cup. But Zampa's form is crucial because, like Kani said, that's their only specialist spinner in the squad. And he's expected to bowl 10 overs. So if he doesn't step up, that can be an issue for them, especially against a batting lineup like South Africa, where Miller and Klaasen especially have shown what they can do if a spinner isn't up to the mark.
Perfect. I think it sets up week 2 of this World Cup in a fascinating way. There should be some great games this weekend. Thank you very much, both of you, and we'll do this again.